7:05. Can I get a roll call, please, Candace?
Good evening, everyone. Mr. Lee,
Present.
Mr. Ochapinti,
Here.
Mrs. Zane Garrett,
Present.
Ms. Tejada,
Here.
Ms. Salahuddin.
Here, thank you. Dr. Deloria, are there any changes to the agenda? All right, can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sweet. All right, reporting out of closed session. The board took no action in closed session. Moving on to communications and board report, I'm turning it over to Trustee Lee.
I've been so busy getting my, celebrating my daughter's graduation from college this weekend, and getting her moved out. So it's been kind of crazy to think that we've got, our family has a college grad. And I know there's a couple of others of us who will be able to say the same thing momentarily, but it's, I have to say it's a testimony to the education, she received in our district, set a really solid foundation. And to see the success that she's had over the past 4 years, and the fact that she will be working a fellowship at the state assembly this fall, it's really just amazing that that our community did this. Everybody here, we're a part of her education, and so I'm really grateful to all the staff for the foundational work that they put in and into her life. So thank you all, and it's an honor once again to be a part of this great community. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Trustee Ochapinti.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, just watching everything over the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and seeing all the changes in our community over the last 3 months, has I think allowed our community and our country and our world a lot to refocus on our priorities. And so taking that in stride as a teacher and a trustee, just thinking about what we have ahead of us as a board and as a district, and the kind of moves that we're making, and looking at ethnic studies and moving forward with that, and looking at the work that we're doing with equity and promoting that around the county. It's very heartening to watch our youth, not just from our district, but from around the county and of course, the Bay Area and everywhere, really step up and share their voices. What we could provide in terms of education through virtual learning, I think is really important. But we know that the world is teaching us a lot right now. And it's good to see that we're listening, not just as public officials, but as people and spreading that. And I think at the heart of that, there's a lot of education that needs to be done. And I'm proud of the work that we're doing right now and looking forward to that. And spreading that message, throughout our communities, especially those of us who have a responsibility to give those voices not just a platform or a policy, but actual action and implementation. And so is the beginning of summer. Our graduations are still underway. And so congratulations to those of you, of course, who have graduates, and to our students who are graduating right now, and looking forward to that. But yeah, this is not the end, of course, it's just the beginning. So.
Thank you. Trustee Ann Garrett.
I would like to just take a little time out because we've been talking about a lot of equity, with all the things that's been happening, with the world, that, I also want to acknowledge that it is Pride Month, and that I extend my, that I also recognize that, I love our LGBT community as well, and that we all deserve equity, not just regardless of race, but also, just because of who we are, and we deserve every much of the, everything that is put forth by everyone, that we all deserve as well as to extend to our LGBT brothers and sisters. So I just want to say that I see you, I acknowledge you, and I'm here to support you as well, as all my other brothers and sisters out there. So that's all.
Thank you. Trustee Tejada.
I just love our board and our district. So my daughter and I participated in a Black Lives Matter peaceful protest last week. We hardly leave the house, you know, but this was something that was really important because it was in our community that we could get to. And it was organized by the Jefferson BSU. It was organized by students. And, you know, we had friends who worked and their kids wanted to come. So we went and picked them up, even though for their, you know, from a different family, we still, you know, we just felt it was important. And it was just so important to my daughter, and it was important to me. And, you know, we went from Jefferson to DCPD. The streets were blocked off by the police. It was, and then when we got to the police department, there was a safe place for us to gather. And it was just great to see a lot of see students and teachers and just families coming together. And, you know, my daughter hasn't seen her friends in so long. She said, I feel so socially awkward. I don't know how to talk to people in person anymore. But this really, you know, it was just something, all the speeches, especially by the students, and the parents, so powerful and empowering. And I really believe it wasn't a moment, it's a movement. And we just have to move. We have to move in that direction. And we as a district, you know, we have to embrace that and not let it just fall by the wayside. And, you know, we have to keep it going. It has to be sustainable. And because this is what our kids and our teachers are, you know, they're worried that we're not going to tackle this, you know, so we have to address it. And I especially believe that this is the right board and the right district who will do our students justice, because they're going to change things for us. They're going to change the world. And I did participate in the Student Advisory Council. They interviewed candidates for next year. They're so, you know, Ms. Salahuddin and I, we just kind of sat back, we offered guidance, but they did all the interviewing, and we actually had a candidate who said, I didn't know students would be interviewing me. And so she was definitely put more at ease. And so that was 2 days of interviews. And then today we met, and once again, I just sat back and let them discuss who will be on the council. But we have some wonderful students out there who will be representing the district on the council next year. Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, to echo that, like it's been a struggle. Like the past couple of weeks have been a struggle for me, and I really don't I have not talked about it a lot because it's hard to go there. But you know, the same as Trustee Lee, being able to be with my daughter over the weekend, which I haven't been in the same space with her since Christmas, to watch her virtual graduation and see all of my babies who are now adults in the same space, again, really was amazing. And I am just internally grateful to the JUHSD family and her family at Jeff, who helped get her through to where she is now a graduate of UC Davis. So I'm just blown away that the we of that accomplishment. And then again, spending that Saturday with Trustee Tejada and our student advisory and student trustees. And that was just a really powerful moment when the student who was being interviewed said, I thought it would be adults. I didn't know that it would be other students that would be running the interview process. And she's like, it just makes it so much more comfortable to talk and have that interview. And yeah, it just really kind of highlighted, like, this is what we should be doing and we're on the right track, you know. And then I just want to also thank Trustee Garrett for her words. You know, as a mother of a child who is in the LGBTQI community, and also just as a citizen, like I'm trying to get to the point where we don't have to tell people, we see them like they know. Like they know just being on our campus and being part of our culture that they are seen, they are heard, they are appreciated. And so for me, that is the goal, that we don't have to constantly do this reminder, just by being part of the JUHSD community, you know you've been seen. And I do also just want to call out in spirit of that, you know, that we talked at our last board meeting about a lot of Black men that have lost their lives, but there's not been a lot of talk of Black women, and especially Black trans women who are just hardly ever reported and have just, before all of this attention, just disproportionately been victims of violence and of society's lack of understanding of the humanity of just trying to live who you are. Just like the ultimate act of humanity is you're trying to be who you are. So again, this is where I refocus, because the world and the problems of the world are so large, but what can we do in our community to make this a place that is reflective of what I would like to see in the world? And so that has just always been my goal and intention. And again, to repeat what Trustee Tejada said, I'm very happy to be here and with all of you and to be part of this work. So thank you. And turn it over to Dr. Deloria.
Thank you. So I don't want to repeat everything that you've all said, but in a similar vein, I'm really happy and proud to be in a district that recognizes the talents and worth of our students. And we've seen it through the student advisory, but I was really proud of Jordan to organize that peaceful protest. Had I been in town, that's one that I would have participated in incognito as much as I could have. I was on the phone with a number of our employees who thought, can I do this? And I go, of course you can. You know, you have a First Amendment rights here too. So really, really proud of the work that they're doing, organizing things like that. And I hope more and more students will see they're in a district where the adults appreciate them for not only their voice, but for the knowledge and experience that they bring to the table. So I'm just really, really proud of that. And kind of connecting back to Jonathan's comments, in the fall, it's going to be much harder than we can possibly imagine. And I think it's going to connect to our mental health presentation tonight. We have a lot of students coming back, even staff, who are in really lonely places right now, trying to deal with hunger, trauma, all kinds of things. So if any district can do it, it's certainly our district. And just a reminder to the board that we were going to take action at the June 30th meeting. Kalima and I talked, we're gonna spend more time on the 30th, really digging into the process that the Return to School Committee used to eventually make it to a place to make a recommendation to you. They're gonna go over the process. They're gonna share a lot of feedback data with you, and then make sure that everybody completely understands what the options are. And then give you time to ask questions and let things sink in before you make a decision, because it's a really important decision. We need to get it as right as we can. But thanks to everybody.
Thank you. Turning it over to our AFT Local 1481, Ms. Casey.
Hello. Thank you everyone for the words that you've said to support people and parts of my life. So all Black Lives Matter. And like Kalima said, there's a lot of people that are not being represented out there in the media enough. So thank you for that. Congrats to all the grads. And, you know, this work is really hard right now to think about what we're going to be doing in the future. I'm really hopeful that we can maybe change things up a bit. Our school to prison pipeline has, you know, it's just awful, right? So if we could change the way we do things, I mean, for a lot of us, it's very comfortable to just do the same thing. This is how I've done it. This is how I want to do it. And I'm afraid, and no offense to anybody, I'm really afraid that getting more information from the people out there, you know, students, parents, educators, we all fall back onto what's comfortable. So when we do surveys, that's what happens. Unfortunately. So I'm a little worried about doing more surveys because people tend to click the box of what's most comfortable for them and what they're used to. And I think we really need to shake this place up. I had to watch my words, but you know, so just think about that. And I'm trying to think about that. I'm trying to talk to people about that. And it's difficult because we all turn back to what's comfortable or what we know, as opposed to what we don't know, which is one of the reasons why I think, you know, the all Black Lives Matter situation, you know, people don't, you know, if they don't know anybody, they don't feel comfortable with people. And then they have these different ideas about how people are. It's all connected. So if we can start the next year with something really special and try to educate all of us in a different way, that's really what I hope for. That's my little dream, but I know that, you know, we'll see what happens. But if we can really start the year off with something different for our mental health, for our world health, for our you know, people's lives. So that's all I have to say today. Thank you for not doing the pledge. I appreciate that.
No worries, thank you. All right, moving on to consent agenda. Unless anyone wants to pull an item to discuss, can I get a motion to approve consent?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, awesome. Okay, so with that, just to pause for a moment. In our appointments, we had 2 administrative appointments. The first one was Jonathan Portney, who is our new director now of the Daly City Youth Health Center. Ooh, welcome. And so no pressure, but this will just open the floor to you if you wanted to address the public briefly. Now's the time.
Great, I'll keep it short, just saying that the sentiments I've heard echoed in the time that was allowed for each individual to speak is Alexa's over here yelling at me. It was humbling. Part of the reason I was indicating before our time ran out in our last session about why I'm here is because I do want to shake up the system in a positive way for youth. I don't want to operate off of perceived needs. I want to operate off of actual needs. I want to meet them, the youth, the children, the families who are suffering right now. Never putting myself in a position of privilege, but always humbling myself by going door to door in the community throughout San Mateo County to figure out what it is that they need to be able to address the social determinants of health is absolutely important, because we can provide the services textbook, but if we're not providing the services that are tangible to the heart, then we're not doing our job. And so I'm excited. I'm excited to find a new way, because we need one now. We need one now. And if we don't, then we're going to miss out on an opportunity for our youth to be the new leaders of the movement, because they are ambitious. They do have a vision. And how do we leverage that and keep them healthy? Right? And I'm excited. And I want to thank you guys for creating space for me. And thank you for welcoming me. And it's going to be tough, but we're going to do it. And we're going to continue doing it. That makes me happy.
Thank you. Welcome. We are also equally excited. It is just an honor to have you here. So thank you so much. Welcome. And our other appointment is Christian Storm, who is our new VP of Jefferson High School. Welcome.
Hi, friends. Thanks for having me here. I'm pretty excited to be part of the team. Whenever you come on board of a new school or a new place, you're always a little tentative, right? You're trying to figure stuff out. And after the last few minutes of just hearing what everybody's saying, I think I found a good place. Like, I think I believe what you guys are saying, and I understand what we're saying. I think we're all going in the same direction. That fit is super important for an administrator in a high school anywhere, right? And so, and at a time like this, a critical point, I think this is very valuable to be all on the same page and all pushing forward and all pushing the envelope and all trying to make the future what we should have as a future for our youth that are happening. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Welcome to you both. Welcome to the JUHSD community, because we are definitely a community and you now are both part of it. Welcome. And I do also want to get a shout out to Ms. Presta, who again, just blown me away with the people that she finds, the amazing people that she finds to join our organization. So thank you so much again, Ms. Presta, for your hard work. Okay. Okay, so moving on to public comment, and just to the new appointments, you don't have to stay on if you want to jump off now, because I know that you guys might be busy with other stuff and planning. Feel free, if you want to just stay on and hear the rest of the meeting, you can stay and do that as well. Moving on to public comment, Ms. Garrett, do we have any items for public comment?
There are no public comments for tonight.
Thank you. Moving on now to discussion items, education services, our JUHSD Integrated Mental Health Supports Program. Turning it over to Dr. Deloria for an introduction.
Thank you. So today we have Sally and Melissa here, and I think in the 3 years I've been here, we've really never done a presentation on the mental health supports that we have in place. And I think when you hear what they share with you tonight, you're going to have yet one more reason to be proud of our district. We still have work to do. I'm sure they're going to share that with you, but they're going to share, kind of give you an overview, and you're going to be introduced to a whole new alphabet soup. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Melissa and Sally. Welcome to both of you tonight.
Thank you. I'm Sally Payson-Hayes. I'm the clinical supervisor for the internship program, which is part of the Integrated Mental Health Supports Program. And I don't know if you guys have access to, but we sent out a background sheet that has all the helpful acronyms that you may need to look at in order to understand what we are talking about, because I'm sure you don't want to hear just a bunch of alphabet soup when you're looking at things. I want to make sure everybody has access to that. Do you all have access to that? Yes?
It was shared on the weekly recap.
Okay, so if you have a question, that has all of those acronyms right there, right, easily accessible, just in case you're wondering. I don't want anybody to be confused. So I'm going to go ahead and Melissa is, so my job is as the clinical supervisor for the program. I'm formerly the lead psychologist. I started here 2 years, so this is my third year, 2 years prior as the lead psychologist program specialist, and then transitioned to just doing the clinical supervision. And so then I will let Melissa introduce herself before I actually start the slides.
Hi, everybody. It's really sweet to see all of your faces, and thank you also for all your introductory comments. It was very moving, and it's one of the reasons I stay in this district for so long, is to be part of something really real, and that has humanity at its core. So I'm Melissa Ambrose. You all know me. I am the wellness coordinator for the district, and in my role as coordinator, and also before when I was a wellness counselor, one of the things I do that some of you may not know is we supervise graduate levels interns, so interns that are in their MFT program or MSW programs, or an LPCC program. So they're in a different level of their schooling as the interns that Sally supervises. And then also I work obviously with all of the wellness coordinators as a collaborative group. And I just also want to say Sally did the entire slide presentation. So and did all the data crunching. And so I just want to make sure she gets, recognition for that. I didn't do any of the difficult work for the presentation tonight.
No, but this is a combined effort, I must say. We are an integrated mental health supports team, which integrates all of us, the wellness folks, as well as all the psych services folks. So just so you understand. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen to have the presentation available. If you, because then I can't see anybody, I don't think, or you're off to the sides, I think. But if you have a question or you want me to stop, then let me know. And so I'm going to try and put this off to the edge. So you have to yell because I won't be able to hear you. I'm going to put it on the presentation and whoops, sorry, I've got to get to the beginning. Okay, so this is the integrated mental health supports program at Jefferson Union High School District, and Melissa and I are the presenters. The purpose of this is to inform the Board of Trustees on Jefferson Union High School District's integrated mental health supports program and its impact on students' well-being while creating cost-saving measures for the district. And I just wanted to briefly give you a sense of what it was like before I came here. I came in 2017-18, and before this, what we had essentially were Tier 1 universal supports through the wellness folks and the wellness drop-in, and this primarily dealt with crisis supports and referral to outside agencies. And then we had almost no Tier 2 supports for mental health. And so what was happening was that kids would go straight to these SSTs and there would be a referral for assessment. And then that went to outpatient, educationally related mental health services, therapy with behavioral health and recovery services. And so basically, whoops. What we had is the wellness counselors could only provide Tier 1 services, and there was a lot of putting out of fires and crisis response. There were no Tier 2 therapeutic or behavior support. There was no role in early intervention for psychologists, and there was an increase in costly BHRS services, which again are the behavioral health and recovery services. Now, what we've put into place since then is we've added, in addition to the behavioral health and recovery services, the BHRS at the Tier 3, we have the wellness counselors as we had before. We now have wellness interns, as Melissa mentioned. And then school psychologists, we had a mental health clinician for 2 years. And then we have psychology interns who are either school psychologist or clinical psychologist interns in their pre-doctoral or pre-master's practicums. And so now we have a lot more at that level. And so what I'm going to do is basically describe this to you. And here we have sort of a chart of who provides these services. And if you notice, down at the bottom is the school counselors, and they're not really part of the IMHS team. However, they are kind of integrated into the overall supports for students, and we had that prior, so that was there before. And we had the wellness counselors before. And then we have the wellness interns serving both Tier 1 and Tier 2, the mental health clinician psychology interns serving Tier 2 and some of the Tier 3 services, and then school psychologists providing mostly Tier 3 and some Tier 2 services as well. So there's a lot of overlapping. Since 2017, we've had an increase in Tier 1-2 staffing. We now have 3 wellness counselors and 2 social workers, 1 wellness coordinator, but we've lost some Tier 2-3 staffing. Our lead psychologist, the position that I'd had before, was not replaced. I mean, no one was hired for that position. We lost a mental health clinician, but we also gained some Tier 1 through 3 staffing. We have 3 clinical interns, and that was new last year, and 2 school psychology interns. Okay, so Melissa.
So at the end of each semester, we Sally collects an enormous amount of data from all of the people that are providing mental health services. And so this is not broken down yet. And I'll give you, there's a slide that talks about a little bit more specifically what we're doing. So, and I also want to just be really clear, the slide before when Sally was talking about added positions, it said 3 wellness counselors. I think you all know we have more than 3 wellness counselors. We've added in positions. So, so this year, this is in tier 1 also in this term, just to define it a little bit, tier 1 in a traditional sense would mean something that everybody gets. So like a traditional social emotional learning curriculum would be delivered by, let's just say, all English 9 teachers, and then every student in the district will get it. That's a traditional way of looking at tier 1. What we mean here by tier 1 is that it's available. So it's available to everybody. So any student in any of our 5 schools could come to the wellness counselor. So there's no student that a wellness counselor would say like, hey, I'm not going to see you. Under very, very odd circumstances does that happen. But it's that those are very specific and it's very unusual. So that's what we mean by tier 1. So if you go back to, and Sally's pointing out that what we offer in that tier 1 is any student can come see one of us. If we have spaces for our interns, we put students with interns. There's group counseling, wellness counselors offer groups. And then wellness counselors also do a lot of the tier 2 stuff. We go to SST, which is student study team, and SAT, which is student assistance. I don't know the difference. One is where you're with the student and the family, and one is where you're with people at the school trying to figure out supports for the student. And we go to 504s, we go to IEPs, we do lots of stuff like that and consult with teachers and staff. So back to the numbers. So these are just the drop-in sessions. So wellness counselors, we can keep data on literally how many sessions we have with students. I believe that these sessions might also include some of the stuff that we do with families. And so in 2018, 2019, there was 2,578. And then this year, 4,042, and that we had a huge decrease because of at-home learning. You can see what happened after we went the 409. The wellness counselors had a very hard time making contact with our students, and there's a lot of reasons for why, but many of you can understand. Our students are living in very dense living situations for the most part. And with everybody at home, the students were like, yeah, I don't want to talk to you on the phone or video session with you. And then also we had a lot of students that probably don't have enough technology. We provided chat sessions, and those are hard on the counselor for various reasons. But we were headed towards a much higher number of just drop-in sessions than the year before, and then COVID happened. And then this slide is a breakdown of the kinds of, this is just some of the kinds of things that we do. And the light green is the number of students who we've served. And then the darker green is how many times we meet with them. So, and sometimes these numbers don't seem totally right for me because we've definitely, when a student has a suicide assessment, we follow up multiple times. But it's also really hard for us to collect the data via Synergy, so it's a little complicated. But suicide assessments, you can see, is one of the primary tasks that we do. And then the 5150 self-harm, I believe that what that means is that from the suicide assessment, which ones of those do they need a much higher level of follow-up, right? So are we calling a parent? Are we a guardian and saying you need to take your kid to the pediatrician or to the hospital? Or are we actually calling, unfortunately in San Mateo County, we have to call ambulance, we have to call emergency medical services. So that's what the next column is. CPS reports means Child Protective Services reports. So those are the number of reports again, when I'm looking at these numbers, they seem a little bit low to me, but COVID changed everything. Police contact could be various reasons. And so you can see that we might, in the sexual assault, the next level, or the threat assessment, those police contacts might be part of those, but they might be other issues as well. So those are the kinds of things that wellness counselors, those are the crisis situations that wellness counselors and our interns and the psychology interns are involved in, unfortunately, on a fairly regular basis. And so these are the areas of need that we address, just some of them. Again, so you just saw crisis. As you all know, again, there's a great deal of community need right now around access to resources. Stress again, this is like post-COVID, it's a little bit weird to do this presentation because we have a whole nother set of issues we're dealing with. A lot of students express issues at home. I don't remember. And then in between, student to student, their romantic relationships are very complex. And then school stuff, like we do, academic counselors do a lot of social emotional counseling with our kids. And we also do, we don't do academic, like recommending what class to take, but there's a lot of stress that's induced by performing in school.
Okay, and some of the services provided by the program for all students in tiers 2 and 3, this is when these are targeted supports. So this is when students need more than what they're getting through the general drop-in and just access through the wellness counselors. And the wellness counselors still can cover a lot of this, but some of it also goes to some of the interns and even sometimes the school psychologist. So parent communication, outside linkages and consultation, teacher and staff consultation for behavioral support, group and individual therapy, and then referral for a higher level of services needed. So this one here, what's important about this one is that this is the tier 2, 3 services. Everybody goes to these, right, Melissa? So this is all the wellness.
Oh, yes.
The wellness interns, the psychology interns, the psychologists, they all attend all of these meetings, except for the teacher staff consultation might be with individuals, but all of them can and do provide those, with the exception of, I think the wellness interns don't do so much teacher staff and consultation, but everybody else does.
They do a little, it depends. Yeah, they do a little, it depends.
Yeah. So that's the trajectory. And if just to remind you that the color coded stuff, the green is always gen ed and tier 1, the yellow is generally gen ed, and then there's like higher level yellow, which is for students who maybe have IEPs, but the mental health services that they get are through general education. So that's generally the yellow. And then the pink is when you get into, and red is when you get into the tier 3 support. So 504 is considered a tier 3 support. And then teacher consultation may or may not be tier 2, tier 3, depending upon who the student is who's involved. Melissa, I think this is yours.
So this is just the number of students. So I think a differentiation that's really helpful is there's drop-in counseling. So where a person, an intern or wellness counselor or psychology intern might see a kid 1, 2, or 3 times. And then there's therapy, which is where we're trying to see students for a continual period of time with goals and interventions in place. And so what this chart is showing you is since the program sort of has become more robust and in place, how many more students we're able to serve through the program, and how many students are getting therapy. So you can see that like this year, for example, 67 general education students were receiving ongoing therapy, and that might have been through a wellness intern or a psychology intern. The wellness counselors don't have enough time to do ongoing therapy with students. And then again, as the color goes up, you can see higher levels of services. And again, any increase in services there in the dark yellow with the psychology interns Sally, do you want to say something more about this also?
Yeah, just to say that the number that's kind of important to notice and look at here is the very top bar of yellow, the 2, 16, and 33. That's kind of the increase in the numbers that the psychology interns have seen of kids who are special ed kids but need therapy. That group of kids, prior to the services that we had, the only way they would have gotten services on site would have been to be referred for ERMs and evaluation, and then outside therapy from behavioral health and recovery services. So this group of kids, that 56 kids, typically would have maybe been kids who might have headed in towards getting services, and that 33 particularly might have only been able to get services, and we would have had an increase in the services that we pay a lot of money for. And so here's the total for each year. And as you can see, this kind of, this went down because we were on track to see the same amount or more as last year, but it went down because of COVID. This is tier 2, 3. This is the what the wellness interns saw for group and psychology. The wellness and psychology interns led groups, sometimes together, sometimes separately. And so last year we had more students who were receiving group therapy, and that went down because of COVID again. This is just the psychology interns, and this is made up of school psychology interns and clinical interns. Most of them are all but dissertation. Some of them are at master's level, but most of them are all but dissertation. But what this tells you is the overall caseload, and this is just this year, was they saw 94 students total between 3 of them. 23 of those kids were general ed, 33 again were that special education with no educationally related mental health services as part of their IEP. And then 38 of them were kids who would have otherwise been seen through BHRS if our interns had not taken them on. So this next slide is this is just to talk about the BHRS outpatient and the JUHSD outpatient. So these are just the ERMS kids that we now see at the tier 3. If you notice, in 2015 and 16 and 16, 17, we didn't see anybody because that's before I came here. Then when I came, we started with 12 students, and last year we were at 38. All of these students have services as part of their IEPs, and they have treatment plans, and they have goals and services that are goals that are aligned with their IEP goals, and then services to meet those goals. So as you can see, the numbers that we have been serving and the need has gone up, but our actual dependence upon BHRS has gone down. And here's one thing also just to remember about BHRS is once a kid qualifies for BHRS, they very rarely are exited. So we would see kids who would come in as freshmen with BHRS services, and they would have those same services 4 years later. And so I didn't anticipate that we would see a great decrease in the numbers of BHRS students until they actually started to graduate out, and they actually now have started to graduate out. So we'll have even fewer next year. This is kind of to give you a sense of how the tier 3 services for individual therapy has changed since from 2015, 16 to 2019, 20. And you can see we had a really high number of kids who were getting outside individual therapy, outpatient treatment. And what that would mean is they would come in and they would work just with the kid and then they would leave. So there was no talking with any faculty, any staff, anything like that. Just not a lot of integration. I can't say none, but not as much as we would probably like. If they use a very, individual focused support system. And if you look here, this MHE stands for Mental Health Enhanced. That is our program at Westmore High School, which at this point in 2015, 2016, and 2016-17 had 2 classes worth of students, 18 and 19. So they had 2 classes. And then the year that I came on board, we had fewer kids who were actually in that class. So it went down to one class, and it stayed pretty stable at that point. Our therapeutic day school program, which is the one that is the one at the district offices where the kids are in, they can't really be at a comprehensive campus and they need mental health supports very frequently throughout the day. The mental health enhanced have access to therapy throughout the day, but they don't have it as frequently. So at TDS, it's really integrated to their whole educational experience. And as you can see, the numbers for the kids who went into TDS have gone down, and they're now at 12. So we at this point have only one therapeutic day school teacher, when last year we had 2. And then the outpatient has gone down considerably. Now, this is the money that we pay BHRS. And as you can see, it was going up and up and up, and then it started to go down. And the thing that I think is interesting is in 2018, though we had fewer dollars actually going to them, we paid more. And that's because the percentage of what we were actually getting covered went up, went down. So we ended up paying, I think, almost 40% this year for the services, whereas back in 2015, I think it was 26%. So the taller number also refers to what they bill, and that's the kids. The difference is the 248. Those are kids who are covered by Medi-Cal. So I'm sorry. So the difference between 248 and 914 is the difference that they collect from Medi-Cal. So they're able to collect quite a lot of money from Medi-Cal funding. But anyway, the costs went down about $121,000 from 2018 to 2019, which is pretty striking. And our NPS placements, now the thing is, these are not really statistically significant because they're so small, but each of these kids represents quite a lot of money. Like the 5 kids in NPS day treatment can each cost $100,000. The 2 kids can each cost $200,000 to $250,000. So anyway, you can see that up till 27-18, when I first got there, our trajectory was just increasing, and we were spending a lot more money. This year, we didn't refer any of our own kids to residential treatment at all. That asterisk indicates that we had 2 kids who came to us into the district being placed into residential either by probation or social workers. So this is an important slide because it sort of shows the mental health money that we get allocated to us from the SELPA. That's the blue line every year. And then the green line is what we actually spend or spent. And the red is the amount then therefore that we ended up having to pay beyond the allocation. So as you can see, that money was going up considerably until we started this program. So, we had $343,000 over what we were allocated that we had to pay from our district. Last year, we didn't pay anything. Now, I know it says that we were below $18,000, but for some reason that got eaten up somehow, and I'm not sure exactly how. Believe me, it's a bit arcane, but the important information is that last year we used up all of our allocation, but we did not go over. This year, we are below $119,000 below our allocation, but we have to remember we don't have the billing from March through May yet from BHRS. So that is not likely to be as much, but it does mean that we may have I don't know, potentially as much as $50,000 that we did not spend this year. And we are going to, by June 30th, apply to have that money reimbursed to us if we can, at least some of it, a percentage of it. And we have to send in logs, et cetera. But it's for kids who are getting mental health services as a part of their IEPs. So anyway, this just tells you that it actually has really led to us starting to save money. Okay, Melissa.
So we just wanted to kind of let you know, and you know, there's a lot to worry about in the future. And as a wellness counselor, I'll tell you that worrying about the future isn't super helpful. As you all know, it's an extreme source of stress, but just sort of some stuff that has come up around this at-home learning and where we're going to end up being. And we have no control over the pandemic. So there's no way that we're putting that on you all. We just want you to know the stuff that we're thinking about. So one of the biggest issues at the at-home learning environment, besides just our access, literally our access to the young people, is once you have the access taken care of, confidentiality is a real concern. So some of the Board of Behavior Science has really relaxed confidentiality for telehealth, for video and phone. But like I'm talking to you all I live in 650 square feet with my wife. She's just around the corner in the other room. If I was on a therapy session, you know, it's possible that she could hear, and we have more space than a lot of our students do, right? So it's just stuff to think about. There's some real health considerations that we have about our young people at home. There's mental health issues, and then coming back into school. The assessment backlog for the psychologists around like students that are being assessed for IEPs or who have triennials, there's just a whole lot going on there. SSTs, all that. We're concerned about being able to maintain ongoing staffing. We keep hearing from Newsom and the district that there's going to be big budget cuts. And we are really increased about stress-induced suicidal ideation. And that sort of tied into our lack of access to young people is really upsetting. And we're also that sort of also includes, like, we're all very concerned about increased sort of abusive situations in the home for everybody. And then a lot of our young people don't have adequate technology. A lot of our families are out of work. The Daly City Partnership is inundated. You know, the food banks are inundated. So it just goes on and on and on. Like we all know that for us as adults who are fairly well established and coping and grounded and rooted in community, that this pandemic has been really painful. And so we can imagine for our most vulnerable population, to multiply that by many times.
And I just want to add that actually this is not just wellness tier 1 and 2. This is really the whole tiers 1 through 3. We're worried about all of these things.
But we're also really hopeful about some cool stuff. So the program is working really well. So like the big takeaway is that the program is working well. And there are some cool things that we can do to provide therapeutic support. There's groups that can be run, like I was leading student mindfulness. There's all sorts of ways to work towards increased therapeutic support and resources with the people. It seems to be that the current crew, and we'll get a new crew for next year, but are really tech savvy, and the district has provided a lot of training and support for how to use technology effectively. And the county is also doing a lot of support for mental health people and giving us, sort of boundaries and rules and protocols and things. We're really hoping to, and Sally can speak to this more, establish a deeper and more permanent internship relationship with UC Berkeley for the clinical psychologists. So these are people that are going particularly into the mental health field. And I think will they end up with PhDs or PsyDs, Sally?
You also wanted to establish intern connections with this.
Yeah, so right now the MFT and the MSW and the LPCC intern schools that we're drawing on at the moment are San Francisco State, University of San Francisco, and San Jose State. Occasionally we get a Cal State East Bay student. It all depends on where they live. so that the commute isn't so brutal. And I've been working for a while on establishing a connection with the UC Berkeley School of Social Work. And we think this year that we might actually get accepted because they've been saying that we don't have a robust enough program, but we definitely do, I think, at this point. We've worked together and we're continuing to do all sorts of protocols and guidelines for confidentiality. We're doing encouraging people to do support for professional development for staff and teachers. Even in AHL and returning from AHL, the wellness team at Jefferson did a whole trauma-informed classroom presentation via Zoom. And then we're really working as hard as we can to get trained. And also the wellness counselors are sort of converting a little bit to be more traditional social workers in the at-home learning environment. We're calling families and saying, like, what are your needs? How can we help connect you to services, and really kind of case managing families in a way that's different from what we were doing, just like crisis, confidential student one-on-one counseling. So we're broadening our vision and broadening our role, because right now the family unit is actually more critical than ever. So a healthy family unit, as much as humanly possible, healthy and all the basic needs being met, is so essential for our young people's well-being and success. Like you all know that we're not going to have academic success if people don't have safe housing, food, access to ways to be able to do their work. Like, we just know that, like, the basic human needs aren't met. People aren't prepared to learn the brain. Learning is sort of like a secondary thing for the human brain. Surviving is very primary.
And so the ways in which we'd like to continue for tiers 2 and 3 is to fully staff school psychology positions, which it looks like, with the exception of the lost position of the lead psych and the mental health clinician, we have a new psych coming in for Terra Nova, which we're very excited about. We're going to need to hire another clinical supervisor to replace me after this year, because I've told everybody I'm not going to be doing this after this year. I started teaching at UC Berkeley in the Graduate School of Education in the school psychology program, and I have a robust private practice, and I work about 6 days a week on average, and I can't continue that for that much longer. So my goal this year is to help this program continue and have somebody in place to replace me after this year. We would like to eventually be able to bill Medi-Cal for all special ed counseling, and we could do that for occupational therapy and speech and language, which many California districts do. But that's gonna entail some changes at the county mental health level, but it is possible, and I think there's possibly at least kind of an interim step in towards that direction. But if we could get Medi-Cal funding, we could actually bring in about $200,000 a year from Medi-Cal funding annually. We would like to join the UC Berkeley APIC Internship Consortium, which is something that's being started with the school psychology program, which would enable us to have interns, doctoral level interns, who could potentially come from all over the country. But it would mean we'd have steady intern staffing and really robust intern training program as well. And then we would want to hire clinical psychologists to support the shift, to provide a more comprehensive program, and eventually to transfer all mental health services to within district, including the therapeutic day school program and mental health enhanced, in such a way so that we could actually also provide year-round family support, which is something right now that we don't provide, which is, as Melissa points out, an area of real need in our community. So that's it. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you. Opening it up to the board.
So I do have a couple of questions. I just want to say, first of all, thank you for putting the presentation together, Melissa and Sally. And Melissa, we're on the Daly City Youth Health Center Advisory Committee together, and you do so much for our district. And I just want to take this little time out to say thank you for all you do for the students, and always looking out for their well-being, and your passion for wellness for all the students always show every time I talk to you, every time we're in meetings. every time you talk. So thank you so much for that. I just have a couple of questions, that's all. Where do you compile all the data from to get all the information, as accurately as possible? I'm sure it's a difficult task, so I just wanted to know that. And also, how are the wellness counselor able to identify the students that need the services at this time? Because we're, at a at-home learning environment. I'm sure it's difficult, but and I'm sure there's a lot of phone calls, but are there other ways that you're able to reach those students who really do need those services at, at the most at this time? So those are my two questions.
So I'll begin with where the data comes from the tier 2 and 3 level, the psychologist interns. They keep very extensive logs. So on a monthly basis, they just write down what they saw, who they saw, how many minutes they spent with the student, what it was that they were providing, the type of service, whether it was drop-in, whether it was crisis, whether it was ongoing individual or group therapy or behavior support. So they log it on a very regular basis. There is a potential that we may be having a system that would, yeah, but we don't know. We don't know. It's been approved, but there's like issues anyway, but it may be that we have an even more up-to-date thing that's very accurate, that with a press of a button, if somebody came to me and said, how many students did we see this month? I could press a button and say this, as opposed to it takes a while. And I feel like I give my interns a significant amount of time during our supervision to actually sometimes just crunch the data and do it, because otherwise it's an onerous task that takes them time. So that's how my interns' data is collected. Melissa, you want to speak to the rest of it?
Yeah, thank you. Also, thank you, Carla, for your very sweet words. So data for the wellness counselors is a drag, I'll be honest. Confidentiality is pretty much is like the highest goal, right? Say above confidentiality, obviously, is safety. Like nothing is more important to us than safety, and safety trumps confidentiality always. And then confidentiality. And so we work in Synergy, but we're very careful not to put detailed notes in Synergy, because Synergy is a FERPA domain, meaning the records belong to the parents and guardians. And so mental health clinicians are allowed to keep personal notes legally. And so we have to do this kind of crazy thing, Carla, where we run Synergy reports, and then we have to cross-reference them with our personal reports to do those like detailed breakdowns about suicide assessments, 5150 CPS reports. Luckily, I'm working with someone in the IT department, Jason, who's the Synergy sort of genius, and we're gonna probably be able to establish some click boxes. So where we say we saw a student and this, but we have to keep those in the boundaries of confidentiality, right? So when we make a CPS report, we have to note it somewhere in Synergy, because what if I left, right? And then we had an audit, or God forbid, a kid ended up really injured and someone said no one intervened, and we had an audit. An admin at the school or at the district level would have to know that assessment was done and the report was made and filed. So there are places to put it in Synergy and still maintain as much confidentiality as possible. The click boxes will make a huge difference, because then when we run a Synergy report, it'll have all that data right there, and it won't need to be as cross-referenced as much. And then Sally does the amazing work of collecting all the data into spreadsheets and putting all the numbers together as one, which is why sometimes when we look at the numbers, it doesn't look quite right, because also like
I do think we tend to have a tendency to underreport.
We underreport.
But I also will say that I'm probably the least popular person with the wellness folks around middle of the year and at the end of the year, because I'm like, hello, you guys need to send me your data.
And
none of them want to do it, but it really makes a difference, because I don't think we really had a sense of how much they were doing and what was happening until I really made everybody actually start collecting their data. So.
And it was really profound for the wellness counselors to see, because, you know, they feel overworked. You know, now their people are feeling a lot better because we've increased the numbers, and they like, so to have one person at Westmore for years was
crazy.
Insanity. And one person at Jeff was insanity, you know, and so they're feeling like they can breathe a little bit, like they actually can go to the bathroom during the day. But when they saw the numbers, they were like, oh, wow, we really are working really hard. So that's the data piece. And we're this year, one of my big tasks is to refine better how we collect it to make it easier for them, so they don't have to spend 2 days at the end of each semester doing it. And then to address your question, Carla, so what we did at the beginning about home learning is every wellness counselor reached out to their students who they were most worried about or her most recently seeing. But we were like really still in the old mental health mindset of confidentiality. And so they emailed their Jefferson Union High School District emails. And what we've learned is that teenagers aren't like so email oriented like we are, you know, and also what they told us is that and you guys were all, I think, was it part of a board meeting, but they were talking about being inundated with emails now that Google Classroom had started so intensely. And so I think a lot of those kids didn't see the emails. So one of the things that we don't collect in Synergy when parents and guardians register their kids is the student cell phone numbers. And we're going to need to start figuring out how to collect that, because we have Zoom, which got cleared by the Board of Behavior Science. We have Google Voice, we have Google Chat, and then we have another platform called Doxy.me, which is a therapy platform, and you can make a chat session. The thing about chatting with the kid on text is that they will like type you a line like, oh, I'm feeling really like, I don't feel like I want to be here. The wellness counselor's like, oh my God, I've got to do an assessment. And then you don't hear anything for an hour.
Right.
And then the kid comes back and is like, oh, sorry, I fell asleep. Right. And we're pulling our hair out. Plus, we don't want to get a text message at midnight, because if we see it, we're on the clock. We cannot ignore a safety concern. So we're really working on how to work that out. What we've done for the summer is, for the first time ever, I don't know if you guys know this, but we have wellness counselors staff for summer school, which is wonderful. So what we did before summer started is Denny sent out a list of all the kids in summer school and said to the academic counselors, to the wellness counselors, and maybe to some of the admin, like, please rank these kids in order of like a 1, 2, or 3 of who would need mental health services. So 1 was like, they're okay. If you have time to check in with them, that's great. A 2 was like, yeah, it would be great sometime during summer school to check in. And a 3 was like, check in right away the first or second week. And so the wellness counselors have just been plugging away. The 2 that are on summer school are calling families, and we're kind of doing a like, hey, we're calling every family. We just want to see how every family in summer school is going to get a phone call from the wellness counselors. We just want to see how you're doing. And they're finding out a lot of things. And then the wellness counselors that are on after that, we have a whole system about how to transfer that information to each other confidentially. We're primarily going to do phone calls, and we do have a spreadsheet with very basic, not very much in detailed, no detailed information. And then those counselors will follow up. And then I put all the stuff up on the website. And I sent an email out to all the families in the district saying, we have wellness services all summer. When we start back in the fall, if we're in at-home learning 100%, we're going to go the case management route, where we're going to start calling home and talking to parents and guardians and just saying, this is who we are, and these are our services, and we want to help. We want to know what you need. Does your kid need counseling? Like, everybody's stressed. It's really normal to be stressed right now. How can we be of assistance?
And I will say that for the kids who have ERMS therapy, our numbers were down by about 1/3. So that's a significant number of kids. And we know that group of kids are particularly vulnerable. And really, you know, it's a concern that we couldn't even get a hold of them and they couldn't talk. And some of the kids had difficulties, and Melissa, you talked about this, where they were, you know, where it's not just our confidentiality, but they can't talk because they're there with their parents. So it's really hard for them. And a couple of my interns would just do texting with the kids because that's something that they could do, and they would look at them and they would be doing the chat, and that would be it. But it was not ideal in some ways, but I think I think we're gonna, on the other hand, I also saw that there were a lot more established relationships with parents. So like the therapist would be talking with the parents a lot of the times about things. And so it became a more family type of intervention, even though it was really for the kids primarily, so.
And I'll just follow up on that. It's gonna feel a lot more like K-5, like the way counseling's done in K-5, which is and which is really obviously the best form of counseling, is that the family unit is the unit of counseling versus
right.
Obviously.
And if you can't get a hold of a kid and they have an IEP that they have counseling, then you have to contact the parent. Like you have to say, I've been trying to reach your kid's not responding. What can we do? You know, so that's been something that we just maintained throughout the spring, that even if they weren't getting therapy as regularly as they had been when they were dropping in, you know, when they were at school, that was the way that we at least made sure that we were in touch with the family, so that the family understood what we were offering and what they had access to, even if they didn't take it. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for answering my questions. And again, I really, thank you for continuing to keep the wellness of the, and the mental health of the students in mind, especially during these times. So thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, thank you for all the information, presentation, of course, and all your work. The work of our counselors in schools, just noting back to the presentation, all the work that we've been trying to do, understaffed and underfunded, of course, with the high student to, counselor ratio in schools, prior to boosting what we're doing with wellness and having those resources. For me as a special education teacher, I see it a lot, because a lot of our students need those services, and even at times, between them or their parents in an IEP meeting, which can be awkward at best sometimes, people don't always reach out for those services. So the fact that we're expanding those and looking at all the charts, that it does make an impact, fiscal impact, and we need to think more strategically about how we can provide those services. But even when we're saving money, which is good to see, I'm glad you also pointed out that we need more resources. And this all come from within our district. We have to look at the state. And really, we should be looking to our city and county. The ACA Youth Health Center has done a lot over the entire span of its inception and development here in Daly City and for our entire district. But even with a new center, we're still trying to catch up with funding, right? So I just wanted to highlight that. I did want to say too, or just I guess my question would be, and given everything you were mentioning about the transition, for this year's seniors, just remembering as a teacher, this year's seniors started their freshman year after this presidential election, the past one, in this entire presidency. And they graduated during this COVID-19 era. That's a lot for anybody, let alone, teenagers that are trying to go through it. And so when you were describing between tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, generally those services, right? Students with special needs and just going through social emotional, distress at any point in their life have been the only ones designated until more recently we're seeing that we have these needs. So I guess my question is, as we're looking at mental health through a larger lens that goes beyond from what I think people understand to be simply mental health issues or simply psychological issues, how are we going to expand that to engage, like you said, the family unit as a component and as intrinsic to culture and race, and a lot of things that we're talking about as a society right now that are causing a lot of distress and discussions about violence. For a lot of teenagers, that can be internalized to a dangerous degree and cause a lot of confusion, and that kind of confusion we solve with education, right? And so I'm hoping that some of the things we're doing as a district we can do, but how can we align our mental health work, like a health class we have in school? Obviously one semester is not enough, but these services are how can we align that with our curriculum and what kind of ideas?
I know I have many ideas, and it's way too much to talk about here. But one of the things that we actually talked about doing is to have a more in-depth conversation with you guys about the sorts of things that we're thinking about doing in the fall. Because this presentation that you saw is 15 minutes or a little bit more than 15 minutes. I did a 3-hour presentation at the American Psychological Association last year. And there are huge issues that extend way beyond our district. One of the things that I can just say in general is that mental health across the state of California, across the country, but California is the one that I looked at specifically, has gone up exponentially at the same time as our healthcare systems have been completely defunding support for mental health. So we are kind of caught because we offer free and appropriate public education, and there is no such thing as free and appropriate public health services. We get stuck with the cost, right? And it's going up, and it's going up for everybody. In fact, the two things that seem to be going up that almost eats up entirely all of the increases in the budget prior to this disaster were autism increases in mental health. So, I think that you're right that if it's on a bigger stage in some ways, but so you talked about things that are both large and granular. And so I would say that one of the things that would be probably helpful for us to be thinking about is how we can situate ourselves as a district to advocate to having a shift and change to having access to Medi-Cal money. Because if we can figure out how to do that, we can actually become a lot more nimble to provide more resources for folks that will meet the needs of our particular community that is unique to our community, but also maybe something that we're all dealing with across the board. So I know that's not a very satisfying answer, I'm sure, but that's what I can say at this point.
And Nick, I'll just add really quickly that as a white woman who has a lot of privilege in the world, the answer is I don't know. That mental health, most of mental health models, like most therapeutic models, most mental health schools are based on white culture and white ideas. And so we are really, and there used to be this concept called cultural competence. So when I went to graduate school, I had to take these classes in cultural competence, and it's embarrassing to tell you what the curriculum was. It was like literally, this is what African American culture is like, and this is what African American folks need for therapy. This is what Latino, like really, we had a textbook like that. And so, and that wasn't that long ago. That was 2008. And so what the term that's being used now is called cultural humility, that we present humility, we're humble, and we say, I don't actually know. And nor am I going to ask you to be my teacher, because that's never the person's job, but I'm going to come to meeting with you as a human being and a not knowing stance. So when I do supervision with the wellness counselors and the interns, we talk about race, we talk about privilege, we talk about class, we talk about gender, we talk about sex, like we talk about things that weren't talked about in the past. So that I can say we're doing. Yeah. Secondly, we're looking really hard for mental health clinicians that match the demographics of our schools. That is very difficult because everybody's looking for mental health clinicians that match the demographics that are not predominantly white, right? And I'll just say, as a white person from a privileged background, economically and educationally, like a lot of culturally in my family, like we are in the helping profession. It's what you do. So there's a lot of white therapists, a lot of white female therapists. And so our district doesn't pay a lot. And so like right now we're doing the wellness counselor interviews for Jefferson, and we're looking really hard for a bilingual Spanish speaking person, because that is really essential there. When I interviewed and looked at all the interns, we worked really hard on trying to get people who matched the demographics of the school. It's very difficult. But what I'll say to you is I don't know. And it is absolutely critical, and not knowing is way better than acting like we know.
Right. Right.
So I'll take not knowing right now, and I'll take a tender, open, vulnerable heart around not knowing versus like kind of some kind of rigid, like we got this thing. And we're all bumbling through it. And the number one priority, the field is a field that is non-harm. We want to do non-harm, right? And so we have to be very careful because so much harm can be done in such subtle and quick and unconscious ways.
Yeah.
And so it has to be discussed at all times. And we need some extra training. And the one bonus about home learning that Sally and I talk about a lot is that we send the interns and wellness counselors, there's a million PDs online.
Yep.
And some of them are excellent.
And
most of them are free.
One of the things that I'm going to be, because I anticipate that we may not have quite the numbers of individual cases as we had in the previously through no fault of our own, we're going to have them, the interns really prepare and plan on doing some PD, professional development support for our staff members during this time, because we all have more time to do that. I mean, that is the one thing that we really can actually provide. So, and it may be around the, approaching these issues around race and differences and ways to approach needs for our community. Yeah.
So I'm just gonna, because I want to piggyback on that, and thank you, Nick, because that was going to be one of my questions. Thank you for bringing that up. And I think I never thought about it at the extension of like when the students came in and when this came out. So that actually framed my question a little bit more. But, how can we, I think it's something that is imperative that we do, because again, when we looked at like, to take a specific example, the issues at Jefferson with the conflict between newcomers and non-newcomers, right? And that was handled with punishment, which in my opinion, should have been handled with counseling.
Mm-hmm.
And that we need people that can understand the mental baggage that comes along with, assimilating, but still being a part of your culture. That is so stressful.
Mm-hmm.
It is so hard. I as an African-American woman, constantly feeling like I live in two different worlds, and being one person at work and being another person around my family. And the students are like, that's like that part of that, our life is really starting in high school. And then you have the added pressure of, the president of the United States saying, this is bad. That part of you that's already hard to identify with is already bad. And so not wanting to be associated with that, which I totally understand. Like I understood all that. How can we do that with a more with counseling and just a different lens than the punishment? It's almost like the same thing with the whole, like the defund movement. Like, how do we take those principles from there and apply it to how we operate as a school district? Is one of the things that was really resonated with me in reading the new tiered work and for future moving into those things. So I just wanted to say that now because it was part of the conversation and that was one of my questions. But and I know, like, of course we don't have the answers now, but I think that's definitely something that we need to be thinking about, especially now. I mean, with students who are possibly going to come back to school in August, and who knows where we're going to be in August. Like, I am so thankful mentally that we're sheltering in place and I don't have to go to work. So I don't have to pretend to be okay so that my white counterparts feel comfortable. That is a huge mental stress. And so to have kids who I don't know what the state of the country is going to be, have to come back to school and then still have to function in school, but how do we prepare for that piece of mental health and wellness? So I'm glad that you guys are thinking about it. And I think that's something that we should definitely continue to focus on.
Yep. I think, I mean, I don't know about the rest of you, but I feel like I've been traumatized for 4 years, just having this person leading us and representing the country in ways that just completely makes me feel like I live in the wrong part of the world, and or maybe wrong part of the universe. And I think, you know, if it's hitting me like this, then I can only imagine, and I have a pretty stable, strong base of how to live in the world. And our kids are fragile, and they are establishing their basis of like, how do they figure out who they are? So I think it's a really important time for us to be making sure that we're addressing these needs. I do feel like, you know, one of the things that it feels to me this year was we were just beginning when the COVID stuff hit, to feel like, now we have a little bit of breathing room and we can do some of these cool trainings that we've been wanting to do. And we can apply these things in this place and do this stuff. So it's, I think for all of us, we're all dealing with a little bit with a combined sort of relief of being at home in our slippers. and also at the same, while it feels like we're falling apart, at the same time as, you know, I'm still having some grief over what it was that we were headed towards and doing, and the way that, you know, as you can see, we were starting to really save some money. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's going to matter now. You know, I don't know whether we're going to have, that that's going to be anything for us. But hey, I like to think that we were actually, that the proof was starting to show. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. No. And not to take away from all that, absolutely. And I think this issue is, I just want to speak about it more. I mean, everything that's freed me up is, everything that's happened has freed me to speak about things more. But this was even before this, like being the only person of color in an AP class, that is extremely mentally stressful, right? So what are we doing to help that student out with the mental health piece of that? Not especially when we're, you know, I know our next step is going to be moving to more AP for all. And if that is not your normal, you're not raised in a family that really is pushing AP, like the mental health piece of trying to take that class on, just to take it out of all the issues that are on today, like this is still something that I feel like we need to dive into. There's a lot of components in a lot of different areas where the cultural background plays a lot into their mental issues that are happening on school campuses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one of the things that we do also that I didn't talk about very much, but I trained all of the interns, and I trained 2 out of our 3 psychs, and actually one of them took it on too. So all of our psychs do it, is the collaborative proactive solutions, which is really a way to kind of move beyond sort of approaching behavior as communication of difficulty, and trying to support folks learning how to problem solve collaboratively with kids, so that they don't feel like there's you know, a punishment ethic, but that what they're doing is they're communicating a lack of skill, and we are approaching how to try and support them in developing those skills, and that we are on the same team, as opposed to this kind of idea that if they, you know, that they're just willfully being bad. And I think it's a, you know, when I think about all the things that are happening now, that basically the punishment ethic that everybody has been using to solve all of our social ills for so long is just stupidity, you know. And so hopefully, you know, this is a time when we can kind of really approach things differently. So, you know, one of the things I would love to do is help support having more of a coordinated approach with all of our folks, with, you know, our vice principals, our, you know, everybody, so that we have a different way of looking at behavior and challenges with behavior, and thinking of it both from a cultural lens, but also from a level of like, how can we problem solve and support people in acquiring skills. So that's really one of the things that is kind of my personal, like, I think psychologists, school psychologists, the least effective thing that we do is to assess. Mm-hmm. Because we assess once things are problems, and we say, see, there's the problem, you know, and here's how you fix it, or here's how you address it, but it's a big problem now, you know, and that's why I'm here. And I was trained to do a lot of early intervention work and a lot of early consultation work with staff and teachers, and to support staff and teachers in dealing with the challenges and the difficulties that they have with students, so that they can really feel more empowered and more capable and more efficacious in their own work. And so that's a thing that I bring to the table and really train my interns to be able to do. So I would like to do that even more systematically. I'd like to make sure it continues. But anyway, so that's just one thing.
Yeah, and then my last thing, and it's not a question, it's really just more of, I know the data, the question was asked about data, and my one data piece is like, are we able to track, breaking it down by subgroups a little bit, especially low income, to see who is accessing these resources? Because I know, there's a lot of cultural stigma that goes around with, getting mental health. And is it, especially tier 1 services, are it the people who have access to it outside? Or, and they definitely should have access to it in the school. But Dr. Deloria, yeah, go ahead.
It's a good question.
Thank you. I just wanted to address the tier 1 issue, and it was talked about in the beginning of the presentation. One of the things that I wanted Melissa to work on, and of course that came to a screeching halt on March 13th, was to investigate effective secondary social emotional curriculum programs. And we're talking about, when you consider how much money we already invest in classroom teachers, making sure that teachers are aware of the social emotional learning needs of students, and weaving that into every class is going to be essential. We don't want to be using, you don't want to wait till kids are at tier 2 and tier 3. If we can start building into the curriculum coping mechanisms and other kinds of things through everyday classrooms, we can build up student skills that will lower depression rates, that will improve their connectiveness to school, that'll improve achievement. And so we have a lot of work to do when it comes to tier 1, and tier 1 is the least expensive of services. We're not in a position to do that right now. You can imagine the amount of training that needs to happen. But for those schools who've done it with fidelity, they've seen huge benefits in a number of different areas. So I don't want to let go of that. I'm not going to let Melissa forget about that. I'd like to get to a place where we really do have universal services. Can we do a universal screening? We could do that now. The doing a universal screening of every student is that you're obligated to follow on the findings.
Right.
You have to be in a better position in this district to be able to support that. So then, with a social emotional curriculum in place and with a screener and follow-up services, those are really, really important tier 1 services that every student gets. It's not a matter of dropping in, everyone would get that. And that's something that I keep nudging Melissa on, and we'll get there. It's going to take some years, but we'll get there.
Got it. Thank you. Any other questions? I know Andy, he's going to log back in. He's still having audio issues. But I don't know if there's any other questions, Ms. Tata.
I just want to thank you for your really thoughtful presentation and your honesty in sharing your feelings about what's going on now, and acknowledging your white privilege. I can't even say that to a white person. I can't call you out for it, because it's not, being Filipino, it's very impolite. You don't do that. So I'm stuck in the middle again, growing up bicultural. I grew up here in America, but there were some certain rules. My parents are very old school Filipino. But you answered a lot of everyone's, the questions that were posed, you answer them for me. The one thing you had mentioned that, that it would be great if we could bill Medi-Cal, but for SPED counseling, but that there would be a holdup at the county level. And what is, if you could say it briefly, what is the holdup and how can we get this going?
So we have an unusual county mental health system that has given BHRS the sole
Okay.
ability to bill for Medi-Cal. Even at the Daly City Youth Health Center, they bill through BHRS to bill Medi-Cal. And I know BHRS has also said that they're not taking any new referrals. So how it is that they can have a stranglehold on Medi-Cal and not take any referrals, I don't know. I do know that all the other districts are totally fed up. I also know that there's a bill that is likely to be passed soon that's going to free our Medi-Cal, and not free our allocation, so that we'll have more access to that. I don't know exactly what that means. And I don't know if that means that we'll have access to Medi-Cal. If we can get access to that. So I don't know if you guys know anybody in county mental, if you know anybody in the government in San Mateo County, but they're the people we need to be lobbying with to get that released, because there are districts that we just go to an outside agency and they'd be able to bring in, $200K for and it would go directly to paying for our services. We could pay for everything that we need. We wouldn't have to have somebody come in from outside. We could hire somebody who's there and who deals with our staff and who deals with everybody and who helps us deal with this, not just at the tier 3 level, but also like integrated down so that we could have kids go down from tier 3 rather than just all the way up, which is what they all tend to do and never go back down. To me, that is just crazy. So I think what we've managed to do with this program that we've put together is we have something that we're doing a pretty robust thing for that tier 2, tier 1, they're going back and forth, but it's that last tier that we don't have any control over, that we can't really do anything with. And I would agree with you, Terry. We have a lot more work that we could do at the tier 1 level. So to me, those are the 2 areas. But if we could get that Medi-Cal money, then we could spend more on that tier 1, like we'd have access to it. So it would be a really great thing. And I have a lot of connections with people around the Bay Area, and there are other people whose districts do this. And it's not a simple matter. So it's not like we just have this money. We'd also have to have infrastructure. We'd have to have a whole bunch of things. It would mean a bunch of things that we would have to take on and be willing to take on. But anyway, so not a good answer. It's been frustrating me since the minute I got here, I got to tell you.
Wow, thank you.
Any other questions? Andy, you're back on.
Yeah, just a comment. I just want to thank you both for the presentation. I think this is the first time I think I've seen a complete picture of all the mental health services that we do provide. So this has been very helpful. And thank you also for that, for the cheat sheet, because chasing down all those acronyms is sort of is rather amusing. But the other thing I do want to add is I'm just grateful for the way you're thinking ahead to what you want to do moving forward in each tier. And I think that's really probably the more important thing. I know I missed part of the conversation, but I do find it very appealing that you're looking ahead to how we can build Medi-Cal, for example, and also just looking at the bigger picture and especially Melissa, when you were speaking about the equity piece and the race piece, and the fact that we do need to have a different lens when we're looking at how we support all of our students. So I'm really grateful for that piece of the conversation. So thank you all really for a very robust, engaging, and complete presentation, which is only going to help me when I share this information with people in the community who do want to know what it is that we do for our students when it comes to mental health support. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much for letting us come here. I've been wanting to be able to share this stuff with you guys for a while because, we have we have national interest, and I submitted a poster to the International School Psychology Association in Cyprus, which has been postponed till next year, of course. But so we even have international interest in this project, which is kind of unusual because there aren't a lot of programs that have this sort of really strong didactic training program, clinical training program built into it, which is kind of the thing that's why I'm here, because I believe in it. I believe in that multi-tiered training. I believe in supporting teachers with that kind of structure, and also to free up our school psychologists to do more than just be assessors, because they have an expertise that is really, really powerful and can be very, very helpful. So that's kind of why I started this whole thing. And I really appreciate your being willing to let us present to you what we've been doing together. So.
Absolutely. Thank you so much to both of you for all of your work. I know that this year has been extremely stressful and taxing on you guys, and the stress of not being able to reach students. I can't even imagine. So, please know that I'm thinking of both of you, and I'm very grateful for all the work that you both have been doing. And I know I was like, Sally, no, don't leave, but I understand. Yeah. It is.
Somebody can do this. I don't want it to die. So it's really that we figure out somebody who can carry this forward, because it's an unusual, really important program, and I really want it to continue. So thank you for your support.
And I also want to thank Dr. Deloria, because I remember the first time I ever heard about multi-tiered systems of support was from Dr. Deloria. I believe it was the first year you started, I think. And that's where I first heard about this and really started investigating it, and learned a lot from you, and then at the county level. So to me, I'm so thankful for your leadership, and I'm really proud to be a part of JUHSD and seeing how far we've come, and how something that I saw spoken to me first when I was superintendent, and then seeing the program really spelled out at the county, at this San Mateo County School Boards Association meeting that we had, where they really went into depth into this, and to see that we already have this going in our district. Like, we're so far ahead of other districts in the work that we're doing. I'm just grateful for all three of you for the work that you've done here. That really puts us in the right place to start the work of getting ready for all of this stuff that's coming. Like, we don't have to start this now. This is already foundationally has been built. So I'm grateful to all three of you. Thank you very much. So with that, you ladies don't have to stay. Please feel free to hop off, because I know that it's a long evening and you might want to get dinner if you haven't already. So thank you so much for joining us. And moving on to our next item, which is an action item, Human Resources, the Declaration of Need for Fully Qualified Educators, turning it over to Ms. Presta.
Thank you. This actually is something that we do every year. Unfortunately, we often find ourselves in a place where we don't have enough fully qualified teachers. And so we kind of estimate. I overestimated this time and sort of added some extra spots, because last year we needed to come back and ask for more and do it again because we didn't have enough. So this is just something that we do every year in case we need to hire teachers that are still working on our credentials.
Sorry, I was muted. Unless there are any questions, if I can get a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Awesome. Moving on to approval of the 2020-2021 variable term waiver. Ms. Presta.
Okay, I'm going to, I was quite wordy in my explanation because I was trying to have you understand why we have to do this year, coming year for Joanna Boondock, but we didn't have to last year. So what we have relied on over the years is Ed Code 44865. There was a typo later on. It's 865 is the correct Ed Code. And what that Ed Code says is that for alternative schools and continuation schools, we can place teachers in assignments with a credential in an assignment that maybe doesn't match that credential. So you might have you know, a biology teacher teaching chemistry, something like that. And that's how Joanna Boondock taught at Oceana this year. In the future, starting now, the CTC is just interpreting that ed code differently. So the ed code didn't change, their interpretation is changing, and they're sort of tightening it up. And what they're doing is they will still allow, for instance, a chemistry teacher to teach biology, but they won't allow a teacher with a general ed credential to teach in special ed. So that is how Joanna was teaching special ed at Oceana, and she's a great teacher, and they're actually, they want her to continue teaching in special education. So what we're gonna have to do moving forward is do a variable term waiver, and Joanna will have to work towards gaining a special education credential in essence. But the variable term waiver works and it is fine, but we need your permission to do that. So I'm coming to you to ask for your permission to apply. And Phyllis Mendel will work with Joanna to do that application. But we're asking for your permission to go ahead and apply for that.
Thank you. And the explanation made sense. I was able to follow it. So no worries. Thank you for doing that. If I can get a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Awesome. Moving on. Business services, restructuring Daly City Youth Health Center, behavioral and mental health. Ms. Van Raaphorst.
Thank you, President Salahudin. Good evening, everyone. Before you tonight is a recommendation to restructure, a minor restructuring of the Daly City Youth Health Center leadership. I worked with AFT, the Daly City Youth Health Center Advisory Committee, and the Daly City Youth Health Center staff, as well as community partners, to look at ways to strengthen the mental health programming at the Daly City Youth Health Center. And this is kind of a conglomeration of those recommendations put together in one package. So what is before you today is to approve the 2021 salary schedule, which adds an admin position. The salary schedule, along with the job description for that new position, which is the Director of Behavioral and Mental Health, and then just a name change on the director to executive director to closer mirror what happens in nonprofits with whom we compete for funds.
Thank you. Unless there's any questions, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Fantastic. Moving on to approval of resolution 2019/2020/31, approving preliminary official statement relating to certificates of participation issued to finance teacher and staff housing project. Ms. Van Raaphorst.
Thank you again. So just as the title says, this is a motion, or sorry, a recommendation for the board to approve a resolution authorizing us to participate in a certificate of participation, which would finance our faculty and staff housing. So to supplement with the bond has already been approved for, we need more money and to finish the project, and that money would be paid back through the rents.
Yes, and just to clarify, this was always the plan of how we were going to finance it. So thank you. If I can get a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Next item is approval of the 2020-2021 budget. Ms. Van Raaphorst.
Thank you again. I think this is the fourth time in about 5 weeks that you guys have seen something about the budget. So there's nothing new here. The budget went through public hearing at our last regular board meeting. And so this is just bringing back the same information for approval this time.
Fantastic. Before we approve, I just wanted to thank you. This year, the budget was an awesome undertaking, and there were so many changes. So thank you for really guiding us through this. It was so helpful. It really made me feel comfortable moving forward with this action right now. So thank you. And with that, can I get a motion to approve?
So
Move to approve. Yeah, second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Fantastic. And the last item for Ms. Van Rampert's is contract with Consolidated Engineers.
Thank you. So this item is coming in action instead of consent because of the percent increase. So typically when our construction projects, we allow for a 10% contingency fund. When it goes above the 10%, we usually bring it for action. So the Consolidated Engineers are a third-party inspection organization that are called out by our inspector of record as necessary. And he has found it more necessary than we anticipated, but this amount is still, it's not above the budget, the overall budget for the project.
Fantastic, thank you. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Thank you.
opposed? Great, thank you. Moving on to Education Services, COVID-19 Operations Written Report. Ms. Baca. You're on mute. There we go.
Good evening, President Salahuddin. Good evening, members of the board. So Executive Order N5620 extends the deadline for the adoption of the Local Control and Accountability Plan from July 1st to December 15. Yay. This order requires all districts to complete and adopt in conjunction with the budget a written report to explain the changes to the program offerings that were made in response to school closures. So it is recommended that the board approve this COVID written report.
Thank you. Unless there are any questions, can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, you guys are putting in the work right now. Let's go. Thank you. Moving on to consideration of future agenda items. Are there any items that we want to put on a future agenda? I know we have our board retreat coming up. I do think that it would be nice. The thing that's hard is because of the Brown Act, I can't really talk to you guys about any of the stuff. Like we spend a lot of time talking about issues around race and education. In terms of mental health, with everything going on, it would be nice to have a conversation about that in general and in terms of also a focus on just the equity work that we're doing as a board. So that was one of the things that I would like to throw out as a future work study at some point over the summer.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
We can wrap ethnic studies, just a conversation around ethnic studies into that one too.
Yeah, I would say just to add to that, thank you for bringing that up. Very relevant and very pertinent right now. And actually, maybe just get an update on if we have an idea when we can calendar this, for ethnic studies, talk about race and mental health and all these things. I know that we discussed last time that we would try to see what looked open in our schedule in the next few weeks, in this month coming, but yeah, any word on that?
I don't think we've actually asked. So I think if we're looking for probably in July.
As of right now, July 18th is the date for the board retreat.
Yeah.
So that's as of right now.
Right. And so I don't know if folks, so I think if, we can send another email out about availability
For
in the summer.
I'm just a point of clarification.
Yeah.
For the board retreat, before we step to that, what we're talking about is we're still looking at a work or study session that's open to the community for community input for ethnic studies. And if we want to wrap that with these issues as well, or even just continue that conversation in two different meetings, are we looking at two different meetings that way? Because I would want to keep it open to the community.
I think all our meetings are open to the community, but before we go to the community, I would like to, we haven't really talked as a full board in depth about this first. So I would first kind of like to get foundationally, just get setting foundationally where we're all at before we roll out something that's like really driving the community to come in and give input. I think it'll just be more of a discussion between us for right now. That's
Sounds
my
good.
opinion.
Yeah, I think we should start with us first.
Can we aim for the larger community discussion sometime in July then? Will we want to set that date for, I guess, late July?
I don't know. I mean, I think we should talk first, and because I'm trying to figure out like what would that community discussion, what would the framework be? What are we asking the community? What are we asking for input on? So I think, and then also July, you know, trying to get anything with community in the summer, even in the middle of COVID, like we're not going to get a response from community. I would never do anything this important in the summer. So I think the target should be when school is in, because we're not going to get a full, it's not going to be equitable. Like a lot of the students that should be in the conversation have jobs, you know, especially summer jobs. So I would like to have the conversation with us and then start that planning process, really put a timeline together, and then move forward with that and incorporate, you know, Dr. Deloria and all the staff and get their opinion, and also being mindful of return to school plans. And you know, I don't want to be pulling on the community too much, because we're pulling on the community right now to give input in return to school.
That's right.
So,
The other
That makes
thing
sense.
is we're trying to find time for executive cabinet to take vacations. So I think this is an important conversation that all exec cabinet should be participating in. But we got to wait until we get kids back in school, get staff back at work.
so to keep the momentum, I was like, can we just have something where just the board is talking, and then kind of get a framework with us, and then start the planning. So like, and get feedback from the executive cabinet, we can have the conversation with them, and then start that planning and timeline. That was kind of my thought process on it.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea. And that's the same spirit. You know, I mean, we watch the news every day, and momentum is actually really encouraging and empowering to see where it's going. And so in the field of education, it behooves us to get ahead of it. So wherever people are at this summer, understandably needing time off, obviously, you know, and needing the time to take care of themselves and enjoy their summer, you know, for everything that's worth. I would encourage maybe like just encouraging the discussion, you know, for students to feel like if there's some movement on it, to help encourage them to send their comments and suggestions and input, so we can consider that at this meeting, given that it's still mid-June and we haven't finished graduations, right? So
yeah, we still haven't done a lot of things. So
yeah.
I would say, I mean, we have the books in July. We can get, we could get emails, an email out about when do we want to do it? Do we want to do it in June, or if we want to do it in July from the rest of the board? We can send that email out and we'll figure out a date.
Sounds good.
Anything else? Nope. Awesome. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
I was giving y'all a chance. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, guys.
Aye. Thank you.
See everybody soon. Bye.
Okay.
Thanks, bye.